Hello, everybody. Allie Duzett here, and today I am joined by Julie Richards, the astrological attorney. Check her out at astrologicalattorney.com and Feminine Alchemist with a Y.com. Today, okay, so Julie told me that there is some crazy stuff happening on April 27th of 2025, and she said, Allie, if you pull the chart, I can't remember what time, but you just click through and you're gonna find the time. And I did not really know what she was talking about. So I ran this chart for noon at first, and then I just like clicked through to see what would happen. And yeah, yep, immediately it did happen. As soon as this moment popped up, I thought, oh, this must be the moment that you're talking about. So just, I mean, we haven't even like verified this in real life yet, but this is the moment, correct?
This is the moment.
Here we
Yes,
have the
ma'am.
sun and moon
hmm
exact at 7 degrees and 46 minutes, and it's creating this grand cross. Oh my goodness. And what a moment. So but we have to take it in the context of Donald Trump's Zodiacal releasing, right? So where do
hmm
you want me to start? Oh, with this chart, or shall we pull up his Zodiacal releasing?
No, let's talk about the chart first, and it'll be kind of like a surprise at the end. We can be like, surprise! But
Okay.
let's talk about this because I think there is some fascinating stuff going on here. And I think even the houses, because for people who don't know, I am a whole sign house reader, which just means that these little colors only go one per pie slice. So like there's only one house, or sorry, only one sign in the first house, only one sign in the second house. Hopefully that makes sense to people. So our houses might be different, me and Allie's, the way we're seeing it, but it looks like even with this, they're the same. What I'm looking for is the same, so I'm excited.
I can probably change how my calculations are done if you want me to.
No, no, let's
Okay.
read it this way because I'm so fascinated.
Okay. So tell me, why were you looking at April 27th in the first place? Or why is this, why does everybody care about this?
Yeah, so this is a new moon, right? When the sun and the moon are close together, or when they're exact like that, it is a new moon. I actually happened to stumble upon this because I was looking at, I happen to know about something that's going to happen to Donald Trump in April. And so because of that, was clicking through and I said, well, why don't I just look at the new moon? And then I was like, oh, holy crap. Here it is. So that's the reason I found this. But I would love to start. So I want to really point out the active houses here and some of the relationships that are happening. So there's a ton of stuff going on in the seventh and eighth houses. And the seventh house is the house of partnerships, marriage, and of course, law, equity, all those kinds of things. And the eighth house is the house of hidden things. But the eighth house really has to do with money, the eighth and the second house, other people's money, death and taxes. And I had this realization that Uranus, who is in that ninth house of foreign affairs, he is making that sextile right to all that stuff in the seventh house of partnerships. Yeah. Yeah. Ali, all of a sudden, the sparks are flying. Yeah.
Oh. Ah.
Go ahead, Ali. What do you think about that?
Oh no, I just like I'm seeing what you're saying. The like a shocking event taking
Mm-hmm.
place involving alliances,
Yes.
reaping what we're sowing.
Mm-hmm.
Some big karmic consequences coming up, but
Mm-hmm.
sandwiched with that Venus and that North Node, um, that doesn't look all bad to me, but it does
No.
look surprising. It looks like this will be a notable moment.
For sure. And what came to me when I first saw that, right, was a sudden or unexpected alliance, right? Because Saturn is the house of planet of commitments, right? Commitments and contracts and things like that. And so when he's right there in partnership with Venus in the seventh house with the North Node, to me, what this looks like is an unexpected alliance, right? And we know it's going to have to do with foreign affairs because that Uranus is in the ninth house of foreign affairs, foreign countries. And so there is going to be something going on suddenly. And either this will be the United States, likely because that's where we're running the chart from, right? Washington, D.C. Likely the United States coming into a sudden or a unexpected partnership, or maybe there will be some kind of unexpected event that causes us to, receive that karmic or to make some kind of alliance, right? In that seventh house. The seventh house, though, I should say, right, as much as it is like marriage and partnerships and deep alliances, it can also be open enemies. And so this could be like suddenly our enemies, our open enemies make some kind of alliance as well. I don't want to out put that. I mean, although it looks positive more than negative, I do just have to throw that out there because that is a possible interpretation of this. Do you have thoughts on that?
Oh, just that as you were talking, I was thinking about how with astrological movement, I always compare it to a clock. And like when the clock strikes noon, you don't eat your whole lunch at the strike of noon. It strikes noon and you're like, oh, I guess it's lunchtime. And then you have an hour where you're eating your lunch before you move on to the next stuff at 1 o'clock. And so to me, I'm looking at this and thinking, okay, this is a strike of the clock. I don't know how much stuff will happen that day or how much stuff will be obviously happening that day, but I bet the events of this day, in the weeks to come, that's when we're really going to see it unfold. So that's the end of April. Probably by the end of May or like mid-June, we would look back and say, oh my, look at what has changed since April 27th.
Yeah, and I think it's important because it was something I noted, right? I want to point out this eighth house again, right? That the sun and the moon are in the eighth house of hidden things. And so we may not see what's happening, right? This may be a secret alliance that we do not understand is happening. It may be shielded from our view. There is that part of fortune in the 12th house as well, and squaring Jupiter in that 10th house. And so on the outside, maybe it looks good or expansive, like it is a good thing. But some of what's happening on, to that, to our egos and to our emotions and to, the country, maybe on that eighth house inside going on that we can't see as well, especially because it's a new moon. A new moon is new starts, new beginnings, but the moon is also dark, right? And so that's why I'm saying maybe we will not be able to see it very well because it may be a dark time, even though it's a new thing, not a dark time as in a bad time, but it may
Hidden
be just
time
we
are
can't
things
see.
happening behind the closed doors.
Yes, yes, exactly.
This is interesting also. This part of fortune is exact the ascendant. So it's kind of in the
Mm-hmm.
12th house. I'm assuming it must be in the 12th house by like 1 minute,
Mm-hmm.
by like
Mm-hmm.
a handful of minutes. But that's basically the ascendant. I don't know.
Yeah, so maybe it's that first house, right? It's really the first house. So what's going on to us, our bodies, who are, to our sense of self, it seems to be positive. Oh, go ahead.
Well, so I mean, the stuff that I am reading on X is unlike anything that I ever thought I would read about current affairs, as far as like Trump talking about annexing Greenland and
Hmm.
like, talking about, I mean, I don't know. I'm like, is this a joke? Is this real talking about like annexing Canada, But is it a joke? Is it real? I like literally don't know right now, but he's talking about revamping America's ideas of its own land, which to me is that um,
Taurus.
in Taurus, and then new borders, talk about the Black Moon in Scorpio,
Yeah.
especially borders bordered by water, like
Hmm.
land and water borders. This is
Hmm.
like because the Black Moon to me deals with boundaries a lot.
Hmm.
And then yeah, this Pluto in Aquarius that deals with humanitarian stuff, and that Mars in Leo that wants some attention and some acknowledgement of the goodness that we're doing in the world. Um, I'm looking at this and thinking about all that stuff and wondering if we're going to see some new alliances and some new shifts in borders of
Hmm.
land and sea. Or like, have you seen where he's like, we're going to change the name of the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America? That to me is like, that would definitely fit with the vibe of this chart. Um, so that's really interesting. I mean, none of the stuff I just said 6 weeks ago, I would have ever thought we would say those kinds of things. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
The Gulf
we
of America, you know,
yeah.
what in the world?
Well, and we do have to acknowledge, right, that this quite tight T square, like you were talking about, right? Mars and Pluto and Lilith and the sun and the moon all squaring off against each other, right? Or sorry, not T square, grand cross. This tight grand cross that we've got, which is, everything there's an intensity to this chart, right? It brings an intensity. And grand crosses have many things that they do for us. One of the things that they can do is they can make us feel like we're running on a hamster wheel, or like we have got to grit our teeth and just do it. Like you just have to buckle down and you just have to deal with it, right? Like you have to, you know, like just push it through and push it through. So that can be something that a grand cross does, and maybe that energy will be present if like it is a borders thing. It's like, no, we have to grit our teeth and we're just gonna push through, right? Even because there's like pushback. But it is worth noting, right? We're coming up against, like we talked about in our other videos, we're coming up against again that Mars Pluto opposition at a key point, and it's going to bring back themes. The themes will repeat, right? We've seen these themes and we're going to keep seeing them, that Mars Pluto opposition. And so I'm worried that this might be a little explosive in one way or another. Maybe not physically. I hope it's not like necessarily physically, but at least some chatter about, is this right? Is it wrong? Because that Black Moon Lilith, she's so good at just like, she will say whatever the crap she has to say, right? Like she will not be nice about it, right? These are not the nicest. Besides the sun and the moon, like these are not the nicest planets to be dealing with,
That's
right?
true.
And there is this sense of like, I'm going to do what I'm going to do no matter what you say, right?
Yeah. Well, and interesting that, we have the sextile from Pluto to this zone right here, and the trine from Mars to it, like, and the thing from Uranus there. Everything is pointing to this.
Yep.
A new, consequences in terms of alliances.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Certainly. Yeah, and I think especially since we've got the South Node in the first house, which is also quite karmic, right? It's quite like you reap what you sow. We're like letting go. And we're really putting that focus from the first house of us onto the seventh house of partnership, partnership, partnership. We will see whatever this partnership has to give. But yeah, that Uranus is really charging up a lot of stuff at the top there as well.
Yeah.
So it will be all that to say, like it's gonna be really unexpected. It's gonna be really unexpected. And if it is new borders and new land, that Jupiter in the 10th house is quite fitting actually for that expansion.
I was thinking that, Saturn is a boss player in this chart. I think,
Mm-hmm.
like
For
everybody's
sure.
pointing over there at Saturn and Venus in the North Node, but Saturn rules the 10th house. And what's in there
Mm-hmm.
but Jupiter? So this does look like an expansive situation where it may be explosive, maybe the grit your teeth and push through it, and a surprise event that makes us face our consequences. But at the end of the day, there is good to be had of whatever this is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we'll see. I'm really quite interested. I just think this is a day of intrigue, right? There's something to do with money. I just want to point that out one last time. Like there is a money issue here. Like you can't have so much in the eighth house and then have a trigger point in the second house and not have something about money too, obviously.
Well,
So
and Venus as well. With
yes.
everything, that is a good point, that so much of this chart does point to money. It doesn't,
Mhm.
not in a, I mean, I don't, sorry, how to say it, but in a little bit different of a way than usual. I mean, like Capricorn is pretty notably empty, but here we
Mhm.
have Venus and Jupiter in the 10th house that Capricorn rules, and yeah, this will, whatever happens, it would make sense to expect an economic effect.
Oh, for sure. And I mean, again, if it was borders, perhaps there you can't have economic consequences, of course.
Yes.
But they'll be, but whatever it is, there it will be about money. There will be some part of it will have to do with money, for sure. And
Yeah.
what we think about money, right? Our egos when it comes to money and death and taxes and like our emotions when it comes to those things too. And when it comes to other people's money, because that's the eighth house, right? Other people's assets, other people's money, stock market, like that is the eighth house. So our ego, what we're thinking, what we're feeling when it comes to other people's stuff.
Ooh la la, yes.
Yeah. So I'm excited. We'll see. But let's go to our surprise.
Okay, well, but wait, because I just want to take a super quick look at Donald Trump's chart on the outside here. Just see if anything interesting stands out. Of course,
Hmm.
his midheaven. I mean, but that's a long standing thing that's happening.
Yeah.
And so is that any interesting things in the grid? Ooh.
That square with Venus. Yeah. I
Yeah.
love that. Like, ugh. And the
Oh.
square with Mars and the square with the North Node and the South Node.
Let's
Yikes.
see, Donald Trump's natal Pluto squaring the sun and moon.
Yep. Woo. That's
Yeah,
exciting.
shining that Mercury, people will have a lot to say about his role in whatever is going on.
For sure.
Maybe combatively, his natal
Mm,
Pluto conjunct the transiting Mars.
yep.
So that will be so interesting. Let's see.
Yes.
The Zodiacal releasing chart. Here we are. So I ran this. You can just to double check Donald Trump's birthday.
Stuff that looks right. Yep. April 20th. That's the one. So for people who don't know, zodiacal releasing is a different method of astrology that we can use. And this is like the book of Donald Trump's life. It tells us when he has important periods coming up, which are called peak periods. Now, Donald Trump has been in like these levels. I want you to think about them as like the level one is really like the overarching themes, or it's like the title page or the table of contents, right? It tells us what's going on in a certain period on a grand scale, usually in a couple of decades, either 10 to 30-year chunks. And then the level two is more like we turn to that chapter, and level two is the chapter, which is like the years, it's broken up into 1 to 3 year chunks. And then the level three is like the page that we can turn, we can open that chapter, then we go to the page we want to look at. And that's level three, which is months. It's usually 1 month to 2 months. And then level four is like the sentences on that page, those paragraphs we can look at. And so that's a number of days. And so we can use this to highlight very, very important days in Donald Trump's life, and we can get really narrowed down. Now, most people don't realize this, but since 2000, Donald Trump has been in what's called a build period. He has been on his level one, that's that first category. He has been building, building, building. And now he has won the election, and he will go into his peak period. That's what's highlighted right now on April 20th of 2025, right before this giant new moon that we just looked at, right before the chart. And not only will he be in a peak on the level one, he's also in a peak on a level two, a level three. On his level four, on April 27th, he'll actually be in a post period. Now, post period is where you're bringing everything through from the peak home. So, like, that stuff is coming home for him. But what this tells us is that April 27th is a huge day for Donald Trump.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so Julie asked me to pull up this chart on the zodiacal releasing calculator. Um and I did not really know what I was looking for, but of course, as soon as I pulled it, I was like, "Oh, I see what we're looking for."
Yeah.
Everything makes sense. Wow. So this is really really something. I mean, like to me it is really something. I don't know. And this
Yeah.
is all happening, by the way, in the build up to his new his next solar return, which
Mm-hmm.
is worth doing a whole video about on its own. You and I haven't even talked about that yet,
Mm-hmm.
but that is something that I had been like kind of keeping my eye on, because I don't know. I think his solar return, I mean, there's a lot of interesting stuff going on with it for this upcoming year. And it's clear that when we talk about power players, love him or hate him, he's definitely a big power player. So what's going on with Donald Trump is going to be affecting everybody to some extent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think just so people know, right, peak periods are very important periods in our life. They are not always the easiest points in our life. Like people always associate peak with like it's the easiest, but I want you to think about peak as like the peak time at Disneyland, right? When it's a peak day at Disneyland, it's flippin' busy, right? It's busy, everybody's there. Obviously, it's one of the most important days of the year for Disney, but when you're there, right, you could be waiting in lines for a really long time. It's hard to get on Magic Mountain, right? Like it's not always the easiest per se, but it is notable, it is memorable, and it is very busy. So this is telling me that during this time, Trump is going to be very, very busy. This is a very busy time of his life. It's very important, and this month in particular is very important. These couple years are very important. He's stepping into a big new era. And for him, sometimes his, to be 100% transparent and honest, his peaks tend to be tough for him. And so this may be tough. Doesn't mean it can't turn out well. You know, sometimes tough stuff is good for us. And, but this may be a little bit tougher, although his post periods, which he will be in on that level 4, that Virgo period, on the day of the 27th is a cool down period for him, which will be a lot more neutral and will be governed more by the transits that are going on.
Ooh, thank you for that. Yeah, my understanding, I'm definitely not as well versed as you, but that peaks aren't necessarily good.
Yeah.
Like when I was first looking at this, I was looking for my peak periods because I'm like, that's when things will be great for me. That's not what it means. It is not what it means at all. It just means that's when you are going to be very busy. Yeah, you may
Yes.
be more stressed than usual. That's what it means.
Yes.
It's not about being good or bad. It's that it's gonna be packed with energy.
Hmm.
These are the periods where there's just more energy going on in your life, probably more energetic transactions between yourself and the world around you. Whatever you're busy with, it is what it
Hmm.
is. It's not that it's good or bad, it's just maybe stressful.
Yeah, and it's usually more memorable. It may be more important in a grand scheme of things. We often make important decisions during our peak periods, or we're just more visible. Like people are more visible during their peak periods, and that is what tends to happen. So Trump is bound to be very visible during this time
Yeah.
and busy. But
Oh
his
yeah.
peaks tend to be a little tougher for him. So maybe that visibility may be negative media. We don't know, but visibility is visibility.
Yes, it's true. Well, thank you so much for putting this on our radar. Well, I'll just have to like put a little note in our calendar, see what happens on April 27th. We'll
Woo!
have to check in May.
Be excited.
Well, thank you again. This is Julie Richards. Check her out at astrologicalattorney.com and feminine alchemist with a Y.com. That's alchemist with a Y, not feminine with a
Yep.
Y.
Yep. Alchemist with a Y, like mystical or mystery.
Oh, I didn't even think of that. But she
Yeah.
does a lot of work with astrology. She does natal chart readings and locational astrology and work with feminine energy. So she is a great person to follow and be sure to like and subscribe and all of that stuff. We'll see you later.